Glenn Ignazio is standing by. He's a military expert, retired U.S. Air Force Special Operations Commander. Hey, Glenn, good to see you on this Friday. Thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. Great to see you, Todd.
Are we on the verge of an Israeli ground operation in southern Lebanon? What do you think?
I think that the conflict is definitely escalating, but a ground war, I hope we're far from that because the damage on both sides would be horrendous. So I don't know how close we are on that. I'm hoping that we're very far away from that, but there is definitely escalatory actions, both from the IDF striking the leadership of Hezbollah and also with the pager and the walkie-talkie strikes. So there are still rockets flying from Hezbollah to Israel, again, since October 7th. Geez, we're almost coming up to a year on that. But we have definitely stepped up the tension and operations between the two.
In New York City, the UN Security Council is meeting as a result of what happened with those pagers and walkie-talkies being blown up. Algeria has requested that. What do you think is going to come of it?
I think the Security Council will normally meet about this, will condemn the actions. But as far as any kind of follow-on, I really don't know how they're going to be able to implement any kind of pressure on either side. But we definitely need to have other actors in the area, from either Arab leaders or others, as far as U.S. allies, getting involved to try to get to some kind of mediation between this. Again, it's been hard as we look at this for a year between Hamas and Hezbollah kicking off those strikes, but we really need to find some kind of middle ground. So I do believe that they're going to look at this. There's 150,000 people misplaced between southern Lebanon and northern Israel because of this conflict. And hopefully they're able to push somebody to come to some kind of agreement here. But I don't see much action coming out of the UN. Unfortunately, they don't have much of an enforcement from a physical standpoint. There's 10,000 UN soldiers on that border between Lebanon and Israel. And, the combat has still kicked off.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, questions about the relevance or lack thereof of the United Nations in situations like this. Let me ask you about Hezbollah. I mean, these attacks earlier this week, very destabilizing. There are still a lot of threats coming from Hezbollah about what they're going to do to retaliate. We saw these rocket attacks, but I wonder whether you think, the reality is, Glenn, they don't really have a lot of good options. There's a lot of bluster, but I mean, they don't want a war with Israel either, regardless of what they say.
Yeah, it's a confusing situation because, again, it is one of those tentacles from Iran, which Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis are. You're absolutely right. It would not benefit anybody to have any kind of ground incursion or escalatory war outside of these strikes. These strikes are bad enough. But I'll tell you is that impact to the communications with the pages and so forth, there's a couple of, other effects or degrees of effects after this. Is, okay, you took out some Hezbollah operatives. Well, the intelligence had to be pretty significant for them to do that. The second thing is that now everybody's paranoid about using any kind of electronic device from either tracking or possible explosives. But then the third order on top of that is that the communication is extremely disrupted, where that's how Hezbollah has communicated, by launching rockets in all various parts of the country. So there has been numerous effects by that operation itself, and that does impact how Hezbollah could launch attacks or an organized attack against Israel in itself.
We know it says a lot about Israel's intelligence and military capabilities that they're able to pull something like this off, targeting pagers and radios. I mean, it's just so audacious. Can I get your sense as, former U.S. Air Force commander, whether you think the United States, Glenn, realistically at this point really has much influence at all over what Israel is doing? We heard that, Washington said we didn't even know this was coming.
Yeah, in all honesty, I don't believe so. I've always taken the middle ground with the politics. I don't represent particularly any party and look at it from a pure operational impact. And in all honesty, we haven't had that impact. We've had a lot of misstatements, from our leadership here about, hey, there's going to be an agreement with the hostage releases on Monday, and that never comes to fruition. So I do believe we're quite disconnected. Even with our political issues, I have to say in the United States, we're not quite sure who's actually leading the country, in all honesty. So there's not really much that is being leveraged upon Israel in that state, especially when we're in election season. So I don't believe we really have much play. There's a lot of words, but when it comes to actions, that's the concern. In all honesty, our biggest concern is about our U.S. troops in those particular areas being hit. Yet I don't believe we have that much pressure or leverage on Israel right now. They are pretty much operating independently and on their own as they see fit.
Always a pleasure, Glenn. It's great to have you back with us today. Thanks for your time.
Great to see you, Todd. You take care.
Yeah.